Hello and welcome to the Miles Morales Spoilercast. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into everything Miles Morales from the ending and everything up to that point. We're really going to break this sucker down. So today I'm joined to talk about it by Dory
Hello, it is me, Dory. Huge fan of this game.
and Mitch.
Hi, Mitch. Also a big fan of this game. Yes.
Great. Now, Dory, you reviewed the game. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. I did, in fact,
Okay.
review the game, yes.
What was your score?
My score was very high. It's actually the highest I've done for the site so far. It's a 9.5. We'll see if I ever get higher than that.
Wow. Oh, what'd you think of it then? I mean, other than the fact that you obviously really liked it.
Yeah, I think overall this game improves on pretty much everything that the first game brought, and I already really loved the first game. If not for some annoying side missions, the way the UI was handled, some iffy plot elements that I wasn't a huge fan of, mostly the Spider Cop stuff. Um, yeah, I think this improves on pretty much every single front from the previous game. Like a good, I know it's not a sequel, but like a good follow up, I guess I should say, should do.
Yeah. Mitch, what are your thoughts after also having
Um,
played it? Otherwise, you wouldn't be here on the spoiler cast.
yeah, no, I really enjoyed it as well. I think, like Dory, I think it improved, especially like mainly gameplay wise. I think it improved tenfold on the gameplay and streamlined and fixed a bunch of like small little
Mitch,
issues
that's
I had with
actually
the first
incorrect.
game.
It improved it 9.5 fold. It's incorrect.
And I think the one thing that I think the story in Miles is probably just a bit. I don't want to say worse because that's kind of like making it sound bad. I think the story in Miles didn't captivate me as much as the main games. It
Right. Yep.
definitely felt like, you know, side story territory. It didn't really feel like it had, I don't know, I guess the ambition or direction to actually do anything truly, big or interesting with the characters. I loved and appreciated this game for like how small scaled it was in comparison to main game, especially like with all the stuff in Harlem. But yeah, I think the a lot of the bigger stuff in this game, yeah, I
Yeah.
think
So
could have been done better.
I noticed that overall as well. One of the things is that as many sort of praises I have of the game, the one thing that sort of stood out to me along the way, I think, was that the writing seemed maybe not significantly, but at least marginally weaker than the
Yeah,
first game. It sort of
yeah,
it didn't feel like big blockbuster territory as
yeah,
much.
definitely, definitely. It
So
feels. Sorry, I was going to say it feels like I don't want to say that they didn't have like as good characters to pull from, but it's like, the first game we had plenty of like amazing pre-established characters in the Spider-Man Marvel Universe lore, whereas in this game we had, a lot of, besides say Miles and Davis, I'd say a lot of the major players in the story are sort of less established in Marvel canon and don't have
to be fair
as
to
good
that
stuff
though,
to pull
like
from.
I think I think that's maybe not where the issue lies necessarily because the first game had big characters and like they could have had big characters in this if they wanted to. I feel like they were going for a more personal story um
Hmm.
with this one, but I think they could have still like fleshed out those characters more. I think the main issue is the runtime. I think
Yeah,
it feels the fact that it's a smaller game hurts it just because they don't
yeah,
have the breadth to really explore those characters and give them more depth to the point where towards the ending there were some decisions that to me felt a little out of character for
yeah,
certain characters in the game.
yeah.
Oh,
And we'll
interesting.
get into all that for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to be able to do as much with the short running time. Like I know we all knew this going in, but for me that helped temper my expectations in terms of the kind of story they were going to tell. I think the strongest criticism I can make against the game, besides some political issues I have with it, and the glitches is that it's not it's a pretty by the numbers superhero story. I don't think it does
Yeah.
anything super innovative or groundbreaking. I think that's the biggest criticism I could hurl its way, and even then I think the coming of age story it does for Miles is still really really good. I think for me the small scale stuff doesn't really bother me because this is a smaller scale game, so it's just kind of what I expect. Like I don't expect all of New York to be threatened. I expect just Harlem to be threatened, if that. So I like, and I think also the small scale one point in its favor is that it makes the game feel like you're really are the friendly neighborhoods. Really makes you feel. No, I'm not gonna make that joke. But um, you know, for the friendly neighborhood component is down pat in this game. You are actually helping people who are local in the neighborhood, and doing things for them that is materially and economically and socially helping them in impactful ways. And I think that's a really strong element of it that you wouldn't get with a bigger game. So there's some pros and cons to this being
Yeah.
a smaller scale game for sure.
And that's the thing, like that I've noticed that as well. There's a lot of points along the way where sort of whereas in the first game you'd help somebody and they just sort of go, all right, thanks, and now I see you later.
Yeah.
But like in this game there are a lot of points along the way where you'll help someone and they'll reward you with a gift, or they'll genuinely feel like thankful, and you'll have a sort of conversation with them, and you'll feel it feels like Miles is more like a person rather than this guy put on a pedestal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's
I think
easy.
the sorry. I was gonna say, I just quickly, I think the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man app is a big proponent to that. Like, I think it's really at the end of the day, it's just like an additional menu. But I think just the idea of like kind of like an Uber app for Spider-Man and superheroes that people could just like sign up for. It's like, hey, like my cat's missing, or like I've been robbed. Like I think
I want a selfie.
like that. Yeah, yeah. Like I think like the selfie mission's actually a good example where it's like small little missions like that and encounters just go to show how, as you said, he feels more like a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man than Peter. Like not to discredit Peter at all, but it's like this game definitely homes down on the fact that Harlem is his neighborhood.
Peter feels like in the first game he feels like he's on the cusp of just becoming a member of the Avengers full time. Miles really feels like he's just starting out. Peter feels like he's almost getting to be too big for New York, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Which is maybe foreshadowing.
Yes.
But I think one thing that they overlooked with that app is that like if it were real life, there would definitely be some dumb kids, putting on the app, oh hey, there's a drug deal going down over here, and then there actually just wasn't.
That would I was gonna say that would have been like a fun mission or whatever to like have like a phony phone call, I guess you could say, on the app.
Genki would be like, all right, I gotta install some security stuff after this one, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been like an awesome additional side mission.
I love their little conversation. Can we talk about their little conversation about installing ads on the app, and because it was blowing up and Genki was like, I know you said no ads at first, but I don't know, come on man, we're blowing up. And Miles like, no.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
That was great.
I was going to say, I think quickly the rapport between Miles and Genki
yes.
is one of... I think Genki really adds something to this game that the first game didn't, because like the first game didn't really have like a guy in the chair or something like Miles does, I think, because Peter was very much lone wolf and would occasionally like come into contact with Mary Jane or Yuri Watanabe or whatever, but like they were more just like mission givers rather than like, people he could actually just converse with. So I think...
definitely, like I think that helps that sort of starting out sort of vibe, because it's like it feels more like a bedroom operation that they're running. So I really do think that helps in that regard. I do want to talk about real quick though. Well, let's go from the beginning. What did you guys think of the Rhino fight at the start of the game?
I had already kind of seen some of it. I had already kind of seen some of it through some of the trailers, so I knew a few parts, but it was really fun, very cinematic. definitely probably one of the biggest set pieces in the whole game, which is surprising because it's the opening set piece.
Yeah.
But you got to make a big impression, right? I thought it was very funny at times with J. Jonah Jameson making an appearance, of course. I had already seen that part, but I still thought it was very funny. The banter between Miles, Peter, and Rhino was really well written too. I thought that was very funny. The fight itself is awesome. It's very funny when you do that in New Game Plus because you can beat Rhino in like 5 seconds because you just Venom punch, beat him up, and then that fuels your Venom punch, and you just Venom punch him again, and then he's just done. And so it's
exactly.
Anticlimactic if you're in New Game Plus, but if you're playing it for the first time, I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, I think it lends like a really strong first impression, especially with like that bit at the start with the helicopter going down.
Yes.
And I like the fact that it started out with Miles and Peter sort of on a training mission, you know?
Yep.
Like I thought that was a really cool dynamic to get to see that because I sort of went in assuming it was just going to be Miles the whole time.
Yeah.
But I like that they started out with like an example of that.
Well, and the best part about that whole thing is that you can see how much pressure he's under. Is that he doesn't want to screw it up. He doesn't want to let Peter down. You know, he's got an obvious kind of dad role-esque thing with this guy who looks about his age now. But anyway, he has this mentor-mentee relationship that was built up really well through the DLC and through the main game. And so you know, you see that continuing with him feeling the sort of expectations on him mounting, and him feeling a lot of pressure to live up to whatever Peter wants him to be.
Absolutely. I think for me, like, as fun as the opening mission was, I still absolutely prefer the opening mission of the original game to this one, just because I think, like, really within like the first.
What is the opening mission
opening
of
minute?
The first game?
It was
I actually just played it. Yeah, I just played it a minute ago. It opens with that song "I'm Alive."
Oh, that.
And then it's Peter.
And then the whole Wilson Fisk thing. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. I think like you could really tell the difference in like direction and directorial intent just with the opening minute alone of each game, because in Miles it definitely takes its time a lot more. In like at the forefront, it definitely portrays that Harlem is a crucial aspect to Miles as a character and the story, with just him walking around and trying to find his way and whatnot. Whereas with Peter, I think, like in the original game, and I think ultimately why it's a stronger experience, I guess you could say, is that like within a minute, it conveys everything you need to know almost like without any dialogue. It conveys the fact that, he's living alone, the fact that he's very much, down on his luck and doesn't have a lot of money and is juggling between a bunch of different lives, but at the same time he's also an experienced superhero and he's behind on his rent and whatnot. And like the little bit with the envelope saying that his that his rent is due slipping under the door, and like you can see him like being conflicted about should I actually do that?
It's great too because Miles has that kind of moment too during this game, right? He has a moment where he's looking at it's when he's at Teo's. It's right at the beginning as well. He's right at Teo's bodega and he's about to pick up some groceries for his mom. And by the way, their relationship is freaking precious and wholesome, and I will absolutely defend it to the death. And he's about to pick up some groceries for her, and he gets the call from Peter. It's like, hey, the transport's early. We gotta hustle. Shake a leg is what he says. Who says that? But anyway, and so Miles does like the same thing. Peter, I think it's a really cool callback. He does the same thing. He's like, I gotta do Spider-Man.
I think definitely though for me, I think the first game's stronger just because it conveys just like the same amount, if not more, information so much quicker than Miles does. Like, and like, not to discredit Miles at all, but I think the first game, like, it's definitely I think it's special the way that they open the first game. Just like, okay, we're going to give you a ton of information in just like 60 seconds alone, but it's going to be super easy and digestible, and then we're going to go straight into swinging and then off to an awesome mission. Like, I think it's like they both have the same sort of idea in mind, where it's like, okay, we're going to start off with a bombastic mission, but I think the original handles it just a bit better. But again, that's not discrediting Miles at all. I think the opening mission is friggin' spectacular.
Yeah, and like I said, like I just replayed the opening mission of the first game, And like maybe this is a really specific sort of thing, but and maybe this is just differences in style and directorial intent. But I noticed that the cinematography in the cutscenes is quite different between the two,
Absolutely.
or at least a little different.
Yeah.
Like in the first mission, there it's sort of it makes you sort of look at Peter as this sort of bold superhero who's very much on a pedestal. And
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what it was like in the opening of Miles Morales, but it feels a lot more generic, a lot more plain in Miles.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's
like with.
I think that makes sense
Sorry, I
for
was gonna.
Miles is it because he's not on that pedestal like Peter is. Like he's not going to be seen the same way that Peter is, and he shouldn't be because it'd be really weird if we started off with a music video that was hyping Miles up at the beginning of the game when he's so new to everything, and it'd be like, wait, but you haven't earned this. Like you haven't done anything yet. It's like that. It's like that Sailor Moon meme where the tuxedo man comes in and says, "My job here is done," and Sailor Moon is like, "But you didn't do anything." Anyway, it's exactly like that.
Yeah, I think I actually noticed that too. I think the main reason is because like something I noticed, especially like with the Game Informer coverage, is that the cutscenes in Miles use a lot more like medium to wide angles than the original game. Because if you go back to the original game, like everything's very much closer to the characters and the action taking place, whereas in Miles, it's like it's the camera is more further away, and you feel more detached from what's happening on screen. I think that's like the main effect that happens.
Y'all watch way more movies than I did because I did not even pick up on any of that.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, cinematography and photo mode very much linked, so
sure,
that explains it for me. But I noticed that, and I think like sure, there's maybe differences in intent there, but I do think the cinematography in the cutscenes is stronger in the first game. But I also want to point out, for the reasons you said as well, Mitch. But I also want to point out that, like, speaking of the opening in Miles, there is that thing where he's walking down the street in the beginning, and he sort of doesn't know his way around, and he doesn't know the people. And I like how that's sort of like a direct contrast to the last scene in the game where he's walking down the same street and he knows everyone and he's saying hi to everyone, and it's the weather is much nicer and all that sort of thing. Like maybe it's a little bit on the nose, but I think it's a nice sort of back and forth to string things together.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it definitely, like, that contrast definitely has a purpose behind it, like just with how like their different levels of experience at the start of each game. But yeah, I think personally for me, I prefer the original's opening. But even then, I'd say like I totally get why people prefer Miles' opening. Like it's a much more action movie. Like it feels like an MCU movie almost, kind of like Avengers, where you have the opening mission.
I love "I'm Alive" or whatever that song is. Like when that whole opening scene is fantastic, and it's I remember playing Spider-Man 2018. I know we're not here to talk about that, but it's hard to not make comparisons. But you know, swinging out that web out that window with your webs for the first time. I mean, it's just iconic, and like the song in the background was just amazing. I mean, it's hard to top that. I don't know that Miles does, because again, I will say that the story is probably quote unquote one of the weakest parts, but I don't really think that's saying much because I think it's an overall terrific game. Right, weak, like heavily in quotes, but but I that is such an iconic like first like minute of a game, and it's amazing how much they set up. I don't think they have as much to set up with Miles, so I just think it's a lack of material, even though Miles has been around for 10 years in the MCU, maybe a little more at this point, but
with the comics and whatnot,
with Ultimate Spider-Man and stuff like that. Not the MCU, I just meant Marvel in general, but but I don't think he was introduced into Ultimate Comics until 2009 2010 anyway.
2011, I think. But like, I think it definitely speaks to Miles' cultural impact. The fact that for like, there's characters that are like 40, 50 years old, no one knows about them, and then you have Miles who came in, you know, barely a decade ago, and he's already got, you know, one of if not debatably the best Spider-Man movies. He leads one of those, as well as a very prominent well, a leading role in a big AAA Spider-Man game.
I just want you to know, Mitch,
So
it's not debatable. It is the best Spider-Man movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I won't argue.
Uh,
I do think I want to touch on as well, like Peter Parker's inclusion
yeah.
was he's not in it much. He's only really in it at the beginning and the ending, and then he makes a couple phone calls in the middle. I like that sort of I like that phone call sort of towards the beginning of the game after he's already left, or maybe it's halfway through. I can't remember where he sort of phones Miles and he says, "Oh, I heard about what's happening. I'm looking for flights right now." And Miles is like,
Yeah.
"No, that's okay. I've got it covered."
Yeah.
I really sort of like, and he lets him sort of.
Yeah,
he
and I
just
think
says,
he
"Okay,
trusts him.
I
I
trust
think
you."
that's so
Yeah.
important. There is a comment on the Min-Max Deepest Dive where one of the I think it was Boswell, but he was saying Bosman, excuse me, that he was saying basically like, oh, I don't like how Peter like left him behind and stuff like that. Like that seems really irresponsible to me. I'm like, I mean, he's calling him like pretty often throughout the game to check on him and make sure things are okay. And the second he hears about the bridge, he's like, I'm going to spend hundreds of dollars to come back as soon as I can and help you out. And Miles turns him down. So, I mean, like, he's not, I don't think Peter's being irresponsible at all. I just think, I don't think he's doing it to just have a vacation with MJ. I think he's doing it. I think also Sable is mentioned. I think it's like a whole thing in Simcaria. I don't think he's just doing it just to have a relaxing thing.
Yeah.
He's like, I think he also brought a suit, and he's like, I'll suit up and help Sable if I have to. But he doesn't end up having to. But that it doesn't mean it wasn't important. Plus, just give the guy a break. He's been doing Spider-Man for like 6 frickin' years. Give him a vacation.
And there's like,
I was gonna say, sorry, I was gonna say, like, I feel like, I know it's a fictional character and whatnot, but I feel so happy that like Peter actually just after like 8-9 years on the job finally got like a 3-week vacation. I'm like, yeah, go have a vacation.
He basically got a honeymoon with MJ. I mean, it's not a honeymoon, but he basically got a vacation with MJ. I'm like, good for him. Like, finally get some time off. I know we're putting Miles in danger to have him have time off, but whatever. Pros and cons.
And I mean, I think lesser stories would have like had that sort of like had a situation where it's like you have Peter return for like the final act of the final battle, where they would like they team up against the villain, and you'd have the mentor come swoop in and help him save the day. But no, like this story was fully on Miles, and like I was like, as cool as it would have been to like have Peter come in and like get all caught up on the Tinker and Roxxon situation. I think it was really good that they like just had Miles be the one to finish off the story.
It's a sign of restraint, because they easily could have put Peter in at the end there, like you said, and they could have had him helping Miles fight Rhino or the Tinkerer or the Prowler or anybody. I think the way that they put Peter in this is brilliant, and it's restrained, and I think it's really balanced. Anyway.
Yeah, like having Peter come in at the end, I don't think that would have done justice to Miles' story.
Yep.
I think that really would have detracted from what this game is and how it's sort of his progression as a hero and as a character. So I think that was good. I also think, like, speaking of callbacks, there was also that sort of there was also that bit at the beginning when Peter's there, when he's hanging upside down drinking coffee, and Miles is like, "How are you drinking coffee right now?" And then it all comes back at the very end when Peter comes back, and and Miles is the one upside down drinking coffee.
Perfect.
I think it's like it's something it's like something so simple, but it's like it's an excellent way of like showing Miles' progression throughout the story. Where it's like by the end he can now sip the coffee, so therefore he is now an official Spider-Man.
To quote like, George Lucas, it's like poetry. It rhymes, It just all comes back together. That well-known excellent director.
Oh yes, definitely hasn't made numerous abominable. Anyways, yeah, I think Peter Parker's. I'd say they like struck a really good balance with Peter in this game overall. Like I think on screen he had a perfect amount of screen time, and I think like honestly I probably could have used like one or two more phone calls throughout like the middle of the game or possibly towards the third act. But even then, it wouldn't have mattered to me. I think they handled him pretty well.
I think you also get more Peter if you go to the challenges too. You do get to hear a little bit more of him.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. You get Hollow Pete and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's
And I imagine like
as well.
I imagine they're saving a lot of the Miles Peter stuff for the main sequel.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
I think also can we briefly appreciate those holo drones, because they say stuff like, when they die, they say stuff like, "I am now entering the void." it's like so morbid and existentially like, what the hell is going on? But it's just like just a little bit of existential despair from these things, like, "Oh my god, I am like, you know, that kind of stuff." And it's just like, what the hell, Peter?
it really kind of like he never actually shows that side of his like comedy, I guess you could say, like whenever he's like in person. But it's like you have him like, you know, whipping up all these machinations and stuff, and then it's like, oh my god, you've kind of got like a dark sense of humor. But yeah.
Yep. Okay. One thing as well, like I noticed going back to the Spider-Man remaster just now that Miles swings so much faster. He moves so much faster than Peter does.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Which I guess is just down to his youth.
I think it's down to his youth, and I think it's also down to his vigor. I think also he's just a lot more excited. Honestly, the fact is that Peter's been at this for a long time, and not that I'm saying he's jaded or anything, because I don't think that's necessarily fair. But I think Miles has got more spunk in him than Peter does now.
Yeah.
He also has more SSD.
Yes, that's true. That's true as well. Yeah.
Depending on your console of choice. Yes.
Oh, right, because he does swing faster on PS4 as well, obviously, because the game's on PS4, right?
Yeah. I was about to say, I think he swings faster even on PS4. I don't think it matters. I think it's just down to his character, the way he is. I love the way Miles swings, by the way. It's so clumsy and erratic, but it's also so stylish at the same time.
I weirdly enough, I love Miles's, you know, more disorganized sort of flailing animations better than Peter's, just because it's like, you know, with Peter's animations, they're more, you know, form perfect and stuff, and it's like, okay, you know, he's swinging, that's cool and all, but then it's like you have Miles is like, yeah, you know, you have him like his arms flailing and his legs sort of like, you know, trying to brace in the air or something. It's like seems more relatable, I guess you could say.
With Miles, it just makes more sense. With Peter, it's like, well, I don't understand why you're flailing. You've been at this for years and years. I think it's like 6 or 8 years or something. But and Miles, Miles is just getting started, so his flailing around makes sense. Like, he's still getting used to it. I mean, I'm sure that takes a while to get used to.
Yeah, I love the little animation quirk where it's like, if you've been like swinging at high speeds and then you just zip point to like a perch or something, he'd like actually have to like sort of take account of like the inertia of his body or whatever, so he'd have him like sort of like his like body sort of going to fall forwards and then he stops himself. Like little animation quirks like that are great.
Yeah, for sure. I think Insomniac's always been very good at. They've always had really good animators. They're really good at the subtleties, I think. They do. I think they did a lot of good stuff that I noticed in Ratchet and Clank 2016 as well. So yeah, really good at that. But yeah, what do you guys sort of think of the side missions in the game?
I think they're really good. Even the frickin' pigeon mission is actually okay. When I saw that they were doing the pigeons again, I was immediately like, oh no, not this shit again. I don't want to do this again. This was one of the stupider and sillier missions from Spider-Man. But then they had pigeon facts. And then it was only I had to capture 3 pigeons one time. And then it was for a really dumb, quirky, and I mean dumb in a positive sense, a really dumb, quirky reason that criminals didn't want to be caught on their cell phone, so they were using courier pigeons. I was like, carrier pigeons. I was like, that's actually, I mean, silly, but that's actually not super dumb. Like, I don't know, it
like,
worked for me.
It fits in the world. Yeah, it fits in the world, yeah.
Well, I'm like really annoyed about when I was playing that mission, I accidentally caught one of the pigeons too fast, and I cut off one of the pigeon facts.
I did too. I felt bad about it. I think you can go back and listen to it in your collections, though.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
that's so
because
if
good.
only I'd
in
known.
your collections you have all the audio stuff like J. Jonah Jameson and
Hmm.
Danny Cast and stuff. Which, by the way, I just want to say while I'm talking about Danny Cast, her podcast is amazing, and some of her tips
Hmm.
were actually genuinely helpful, or things I legitimately didn't know, which I did not expect from this game to give me genuinely and legitimately helpful
Yeah,
advice.
I did like the
Oh, yeah.
tips. I wasn't big on her personality in general. I liked her character a lot more when she was off the air, just talking to Miles. I wasn't. I feel like on the podcasts they have they have those two characters. They have her and J. Jonah Jameson as these two polar opposite extremes.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how I feel about that because it kind of makes it hard to like either of them. You know, it doesn't
I
feel like
like
they
her
have a lot of
fine.
nuance. And I feel like I know it's like I know they're just these sort of off the side characters that aren't really impactful in the story or anything, but it does make it more it sort of it makes it so they don't have much nuance. I mean,
I was, yeah,
granted,
no,
there's more nuance when I can't remember her name, but the woman podcasting when she's off the air and during the side missions.
Danny.
I did like her a
yeah,
lot more
Danny,
during
yeah.
that, and she had more nuance in those. But
I didn't notice any issues with her, honestly. I didn't have any problem with her.
I was gonna say, I think the only time, because like, I mean, really, like as James said, like they're really just two different voices, like like an angel and a devil on Miles's shoulder. Yet, I think I don't know, like it's good to have contrasting voices in the game, but I think there was a bit of a missed opportunity where you could have had like a situation where Miles say if like Miles listened to J. Jonah Jameson too much, he might, get lower self esteem. Except if he listens to Danny Cast too much or more, he gets higher self esteem. Like it would have been hard to implement in gameplay, but like something small like that would have like made their inclusion feel more important and integral to Miles' story and character. If that makes sense.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I what were we on?
The side missions.
Side missions.
The side missions, yeah. I like that they have sort of an unraveling story there.
Hmm.
They have a lot of sort of singled out side missions, but they have that unraveling story of the Kingpin. He's with his heist with his goons and everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I like where that I like how that sort of comes up from almost nowhere, like these innocent side missions that seem like just regular activities, and they unravel into this bigger plot.
I think I think like by the second or third side mission, I'm kind of like, is this like a continuing story arc? And then like by the second last or like obviously the last mission, you kind of realize, oh, okay, this is all just Kingpin from prison trying to make his way back into New York through Harlem. And I'm like, this is like it's a fun little way to sort of introduce Miles to the greater world of Marvel, I guess you could say, through Wilson
Yeah.
Fisk.
Well, and
Yeah.
and the way it ends is pretty damn menacing too, because Kingpin's just like, "Well, I know who you are, and I guess your loved ones are gonna die now." So
Yeah.
I was like,
I was
"Holy
kind
cow!"
of, I was kind of underwhelmed by that though. It's like you just like have a quick little 15-second phone call. It's like, yep, all right, mission's over. I mean, obviously you got to go fight people back at the
Right.
festival or something,
Well,
but it's like, yep, mission's over. We're not gonna like have him talk to Kingpin again. And I'm like, okay. So I could have used another quick little interaction between them, but oh well.
yeah, I don't know. It would have
Yeah.
been nice to have more, but I was just excited that he got to interact more with Haley, who I thought was an amazing character, and I was so glad they had some ASL in the story. That was really cool, and not something that a lot of stories do. I actually had the vocalize ASL setting on for accessibility, and
Okay.
it's actually a deaf person talking or saying. You can tell that it's a well, I can tell anyway because I've heard deaf people speak that it's a deaf person actually saying the lines themselves. I don't. I'm betting
Oh
it's
wow.
actually the voice actress herself, but I'm not sure. But anyway, I loved
Oh, like the
every scene
model,
with
yeah.
Haley. I thought was awesome, and I loved their like interactions. And I mean, they're
Hmm.
I think I don't know if they're going for a couple angle, because actually I really misread the whole Finn thing. I thought they were going for a couple thing, and then obviously I discovered that's not what they were doing at all. And also they were going for like a
Yeah.
brother-sister thing, so I totally misread that.
No,
I
I'm with you there.
I feel like that was on Insomniac's part in the writing department, because
Yeah.
they did have a couple moments that would lead you reasonably to think that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, because at first Miles is acting all awkward around her, and they haven't seen each other in a while, and it just felt like they were hinting at romance, but then they quickly pivot to like a brother sister thing, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
And then like at the end, and then at the end of the side mission chain, that like I think he's talking with Gloria at the feast shelter about bringing Haley around for a volunteer shift or whatever, and then she's like, "Oh, bringing a girlfriend." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's a thing." Like I kind of just
I
thought that'd be,
I think Gloria's just
very
teasing him.
platonic.
I think Gloria's just teasing
Yeah.
him. I don't think that they're actually officially dating, but I'm super into them
not
dating
officially,
because
but,
they're
yeah.
super cute interactions there. But anyway.
Yeah, but I think like it kind of like, I mean, if the writers mention it, like you can kind of tell like that's the direction
Yeah,
they're
for sure.
pushing them in. So I think like with Finn, it's like it started out as like, okay, maybe there's like a more relationship thing to this, and it's like, oh no, they're just like brother sister type of deal. Which, I mean, actually, now that we mention it, was I the only one who like for some reason thought that Finn was like what's his name, Aaron Davis's daughter or something? Because like the whole estranged angle was like, oh, okay, so Finn's Aaron's daughter, and then by Aaron being forced away from Miles and the rest of his family, Finn's also been estranged as well. But that might have just been a quick little.
I can see
I didn't
I can
see
see how
that.
you get to that. I didn't pick up on that either. So just you, I suppose.
Yeah, just you.
But
Mitch.
I think it was the photo. I think I got I think it was, you have that photo in Miles's room with Miles and her brother Rick, and I'm like, I saw the beard on Rick, and I'm like, oh, okay, so that's Aaron. I didn't actually notice on the backside that it said Rick Mason, but
Womp
well.
womp.
Womp womp.
yeah. Anyway, obviously, besides the side missions and stuff, there's also the big set pieces, which are, there's not that many of them. I think overall the game is stronger on those smaller bits where, like we said before, it makes you feel like a member of the community and all that. But what did you guys think of the set pieces?
I really liked walking through Harlem was really cool. I actually missed a conversation with Haley because there were so many people and so many things going all around. I really loved that. I really loved the bridge scene, even though again I'd already seen some of it through the gameplay demo. Not the demo, but the PS4
The
event,
trailer,
the trailer or
I
whatever.
know, which was also altered. I noticed.
Yes, because you have access to
reveal.
they had access to a couple of
Yes.
moves that you don't actually have access to. They
But
were
I was
obviously.
I was talking more about the fact that you that's the mission where you figure out that Finn is the
Right,
the
that
tinkerer.
too, that too. Yes, I just realized as you were saying it, you probably weren't talking about that. I was so just to talk about that twist for a sec and get back to the set pieces after. I was actually Mitch saw this coming apparently miles away. I did not see this coming at all. I just thought they were good friends and something was going to happen between them. I didn't pick up that she was the tinker at all. Obviously, I picked up that something had happened to her brother, and that she was upset about it. But I didn't necessarily put together that she was going to be the tinker. So when that happened, I was like, "Whoa, holy shit!" Like I didn't see that coming. So that was a really cool reveal for me because I didn't see it coming.
I think for me, like the main thing that sort of gave it away to me was like, okay, we've been introduced to this female character who clearly has like a backstory and a conflicted past, and then you also have Tinkerer, who's also like by the looks of it like a young woman, and they have similar heights and builds. And I'm like, oh, so it's Finn. Like I think the in the dinner scene especially, like that little moment where Finn sort of has that little outburst, like, I've seen what you've been doing with Roxxon and they need to be taken down or whatnot. I'm like, okay, so she's Tinkerer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like with these sorts of
to me.
I feel like with these sorts of reveals, they always do it in a really clever way where they put some some hint in there about 20 seconds before the actual reveal that makes me go, oh wait, I know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And then they make the
Yeah.
reveal. But weirdly enough, just before that, I had a moment where I thought, wait a minute, is the Tinkerer going to be Miles's mum?
Oh my god! Don't kill Mitch.
I don't remember why I jumped to that conclusion, but for a second there, I
That
thought, oh wait,
would have been wild.
because I thought like, wait, okay, so she was at the rally, and then she wasn't. Then we left there, so she could have come to the bridge and, and started messing things up.
And I was gonna say, I almost did a spit take on that one. Well, that would have been wild.
That would have been amazing. But yeah, I thought the
Yeah.
bridge scene was really cool, and I thought one of the best parts about it is that it's not just a big action set piece so you fight bad guys. It's also you're saving people. Amazing, right? That's what superheroes do. You're literally saving people from dying, and Miles does like everything he can. He jumps through 2 windows of a bus and onto a boat just to save one guy.
The classic through the bus.
Through the
maneuver.
bus. And he also, saves a bunch of people. A bunch of people on the bridge. He saves, and then he has a fight scene before that, and then he has this big cut scene with Roxxon security. Yeah, it's just a set piece, but it has every single part. It has those interactive cutscenes, it has those the fighting, and it has the story moments too.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to get into this, but there was that part as well where Miles is like, hey guys, I saved the day and everything, and the Roxxon guys, they're still pointing their guns at him, and it's sort of that was the point that I started to realize, oh wait, they're sort of using this paramilitary thing as maybe not intentionally, but sort of as a cop out of talking about the real world issues going on with the police.
I didn't care for that.
Yeah.
I that is one of the very few kind of major criticisms I have of the game is I don't the people that are I don't know how political we want to get here, but the people who are harming people of color right now are not paramilitary corporate security forces. They are police officers, and they're not at all, equivalent. I mean, in terms of who they work for anyway. I mean, you can say something about the militarization of the police and stuff like that, and the upscale of that, especially in the United States, particularly. But I mean, I did like the symbolism. I like what they're trying to go for. It just rang a little hollow because it's clear to me what they're doing, but I don't know that they should be doing it like they are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It felt very much like kind of like how we were saying at the start of this, where they had like it feels like a very much more restrained story and tone. And I feel like this is like a byproduct of that, where it's like you can tell that at least one of the writers or something was wanting to at least touch on these issues, but I think they didn't need to like fully go into them in like especially like a launch title for a big console. Like I think they definitely wanted to play it safe with this one.
And like that's which is why I say it's like a cop out. It feels like a cop out because it's it's like there is the fact that all the riots and everything started after the game had already been in development. So if they were gonna make it if they were gonna make a commentary on that, maybe that the sort of the wake up call for that they missed it. But at the same time, it does sort of feel like okay, here we're gonna tackle this issue while also playing it safe, so that we don't raise any controversy or anything like that.
Yeah, that might be true too.
And like, but I did notice as well, like maybe not related, but the police. This could also be the fact that in this game, Miles is just starting out, so he doesn't have as much of a relationship with the police as Peter does in the first game. But there's definitely less sort of collaboration with the police. They take a backseat in this compared to the first game as well.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think Insomniac noted that like way back in 2018 as well. Like after some of the controversy, they said like, yeah, sure, we'll keep that in mind for the future games, which they did. But I think, like, I mean, I get them touching on issues such as this because it's very important to touch on. But I can't help but feel like it'd be out of place for this game specifically because one, he's he's a masked superhero. He's a Spider-Man. So like you'd think that naturally, at least some of the police, especially seeing as they've been seeing him naturally you'd think that they'd see him swinging around with Peter. So they think, oh, okay, so you're with the other, you're with the other Spider-Man, so you're good too. So, and not to mention the fact that he's fully in costume, so they can't see the color of his skin or anything, except for the bridge scene. So there's no it feels less. It feels like they took the safe route, really. Like it doesn't the vibe I'm getting is not that they're touching on racial issues in America or anything. It's very much they're just, the police are at his throat because he's a superhero and they're meddling with official police business, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so maybe we'll see something more in touch with the times on that in the sequel. But what did you guys think of Aaron Davis? Obviously, the reveal maybe more than halfway through the game that Aaron Davis, Miles' uncle, turns out to be the Prowler.
Yeah, I was really worried that they were gonna kill Aaron Davis because they always fucking kill Aaron Davis. They kill him in spoilers. They kill him in Spider-Verse. They kill him in the comics. I was so sure they were gonna kill him here too, and that really bugs me as a way. And we'll get into this later with Phin. But that is a way to deal with characters that have done harm to other characters that really bugs me in media. And I see it way too often as a way for characters to not have to deal with the fact that they've harmed other people. Anyway, but they didn't kill him. And I was so happy for that because instead we got this nuanced, complicated relationship between Aaron Davis and Miles that I thought was really interesting. It gets you a really cool suit. It's an interesting side mission, even though sometimes I wasn't very good at it.
Not neither.
Yeah. But I thought he was very well voice cast, and I was suspicious of whether Aaron knew Miles was Spider-Man from the beginning, which I think the game wants you to be. And I'm glad, with the reveals here, and they talked about this in the MinMax Deepest Dive as well. I'm glad they just got the reveals out of the way, right? They didn't build up to the because they easily could have just had Phin be revealed as a Tinkerer at the end or Prowler at the end, but they didn't do that. And that would have been so easy and a cheap reveal, but they didn't. They pushed it, they didn't push it, but they put it closer to the start or at least the halfway point with Aaron. Which I thought was a really smart move because we already know who he is. We as the audience already know that the Prowler is Aaron Davis. We don't really need that to be this big reveal at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do as well, not just with the fact that putting it at the end maybe would have been more hollow, but also the fact that the game is very much about building characters, and so you sort of need to know who these people are. Because if you get these reveals later on, that's going to be thrown at your back. Like, oh, you've been this person this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it would have. I think, definitely, as Dory said, I think getting back to the bridge mission, I think literally just as Miles arrived on the bridge, I was getting that thought in my head. Oh no, they're not gonna drag out the Tinker reveal to the end of the second act or something. And then literally 30 seconds later, we got the Phin reveal, and okay, so the writers are actually smart and know when to pace their reveals.
Amazing, Mitch. The people at Insomniac are actually professionals. Wild.
I know. It's not like they're writing for a CW superhero show at all. Batman Arkham Knight. Anyways, I think the writers in this game definitely know how to do a reveal right.
Yeah.
And they actually. Like Peter with Miles, they actually have faith in their audience to, start to catch up on to subtle hints and sort of piece things together. And then when they have those reveals, they allow room to actually develop those ideas properly, which I think, as great as Spider-Man PS4 was with the Dr. Octopus reveal, I think that third act could have been lengthened just a bit to further expand on, the ramifications of Peter finding and of Octavius actually becoming Dr. Octopus and what that means for their relationship and the personal impact that has on Peter.
By the way,
Really,
that was a really cool cameo towards the end of the game that Peter and Doc Ock had. I thought that was really cool that they did that.
Yeah, getting to that quickly, that was a big, oh man, that's so cool moment. But yeah, I think this game definitely highlights character relationships much more, which is definitely one of its strengths.
Yeah. So yeah, the collecting tapes as well. We touched on a little bit, but for Aaron Davis, that was a strange sort of side mission or collectible. I like how it's not just another, oh, here, go and collect this thing. You sort of, it makes it a little more interesting. So I'm a fan of that.
It
What did
also
you guys
forces
think?
you to explore the world a little bit, like look around, stop for a second, which you don't do most
Yeah.
of the time. So that's nice.
Yeah, definitely. What did you guys think of the dynamic between the Underground and Roxxon? I thought it was interesting when you sort of started to have these two factions going against each other, and you realized that Finn was the Tinker. Maybe another reason why her reveal happened so soon. And then you start to wonder, or at least I started to wonder, okay, so are the Underground gonna keep being the bad guys? Are we gonna keep fighting these guys? And I like Roxxon after that does step up to become as much of a force as the Underground that you're fighting against. But yeah, I like that dynamic.
I really like the dynamic as well. I thought I was really sympathetic, honestly, to the Underground. I definitely, I mean, more so towards Finn, I guess I will say, than the Underground, which is obviously the intent. But even the Underground more generally, I mean, you know, it's hard to not dislike Roxxon. I mean, Troy Baker just steals the show in a sense in terms of being, and he's not the best voice actor in the game. I'm not saying that, but every scene he's in, he just absolutely like chews that scenery, and it's just like a shit eat, like a I can't even think of the term, but he's like the biggest heel you could ever see, to use a wrestling term, in any scene he's in. He's just such a slimy character, and so it's hard not to root for the Underground against Roxxon, even if I disapprove of what the Underground is doing in terms of tactics. And obviously Finn is very, very um is you know, legitimately emotionally charged and upset because of what happened to Rick, that she's not really going to listen to reason, which I mean makes sense, and she has her own reasoning. I It frustrates me that I saw some people online talking about how she doesn't even make any sense, or she's just angry for the sake of being angry. I'm like, her brother died. Like, she has a right to be grieving and, like, you know, struggling with her emotions. Obviously, the way she's doing it, debatable.
I do
but
think. So you make an interesting point about that. So I feel like a lot of the character motivations in general, like this is why I feel the writing is maybe a bit weaker in this game than it is in the first one, because a lot of there are a few moments, mostly like this is the prime example of that, where characters will do something uncharacteristic. So there's that moment when you and Finn are, after they've been kidnapped, they're in the underground base, in the Roxxon base, and they're fighting Rhino again. They've defeated Rhino. It's the cutscene after that where Miles is on the computer getting the evidence. Finn's talking to Rhino, and Rhino's saying some mean things to to Finn, and she's about to kill him. Then Miles swoops in and stops her. And then for the rest of the game, from that moment on, she just completely turns against him. This sort of friend that she's had for years and years. And then, like, and Rhino's not really done anything to her apart from say these mean things. He didn't have anything to do with killing her brother or anything like that. So, and then all of a sudden, like, just because Miles won't let her kill this guy who said a couple mean things, she's just gonna throw out their friendship and just turn against him and get very close to killing him a few times for the rest of the game. That seems uncharacteristic to me.
I completely disagree. I think that's very in line with Finn. So she is very determined to stop Roxxon at any cost, and I think she brings that up all throughout the game. Rick's death is motivating her, and yes, Rhino didn't directly have anything to do with it, but number one, he's working for the corporation that killed her brother, so she's not going to have a lot of mercy on him. Number two, I think Rhino Rhino isn't just. I think it's reductive to say he's saying a few mean things. He says very pointed, particular things about her brother and the way he died, and the fact that he saw him die, and that he
Yeah.
died in certain ways. And I think he's hitting on these particular emotional points to get a reaction from Finn. Now, I think Finn distanced herself from Miles after that because they were already close to. You have this conversation between Finn and Miles throughout the Roxxon. I just played this. They're having a conversation throughout the compound about their philosophical disagreement about how to deal with Roxxon. That she doesn't feel like there's any other way to deal with this. That no one's going to believe vigilantes, so we have to blow them up, and so on and so forth. And when she realizes that no matter what they say or what they do, they're just not going to agree, and that he's not going to let her get away with what she wants to get away with, I think it finally makes her snap, because it's not just that Rhino said a few mean things. I think it all builds from the fact that, first off, Miles lied to her, which is what Aaron wanted him to do, and manipulated her into getting into the underground. And then not only that, but she feels betrayed via the Trinity Church scene. Obviously, I think she knows that that Miles didn't set her up, but he still led them to her, so she still feels betrayed by him. So I think there is a lot of not being able to trust him, and this being the final straw of him not backing her up.
I did I did totally get the bit where she's about to kill Rhino. That made total sense to me. That was well done. It was just that bit where she it's that bit where she just totally uh leaves him for dead and everything. It's like I get it, but I can understand your rationale and your point, and it's a fair point. I feel like they didn't do. If that is the case, I feel like they didn't do enough of a job, a good enough job of conveying that. So they didn't have either it was too sudden, the snap, or they didn't have enough or good enough build up to it. They didn't have they didn't do a convincing enough job of making me realize that there was still a lot of tension there. Like there was a couple of back and forth comments of like, oh yeah, well maybe you shouldn't have done this, blah blah, as they were going through the compound.
Yeah.
But I don't think they did a good enough job for me of sort of conveying that there was still a lot of tension there.
I mean, I just played this section, and I got that sense. But Mitch, what did you get?
I was gonna say I think I'm kind of in like a midpoint in between you two, where it's like I totally agree with the irrationality angle, where it's like like it's kind of like an Alien: The Last of Us Part 2 situation, where it's like she's at this point where all she is focused on is id and rage, where that completely blinds her judgment. But I think the reason why Finn doesn't work as well here for me is really because, as James said, they don't justify her irrationality as well. Like there's not a good enough payoff to that, because I think because she's all she does she goes on a lot about how Miles betrayed her trust, and it's like, oh, you didn't tell me you were Spider-Man, but it's like at the same time it's like, well, you're kind of quote unquote leading I don't want to say terrorist organization, but it's like they're doing very terroristy things.
I mean, they're basically a terrorist organization, yeah.
Yeah, they're basically a terrorist.
I mean, they're corporate terrorism, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, corporate terrorism. But it's like you're leading a corporate terrorist group. Like, why are you mad at Miles about lying to you? That's like your thing is arguably much worse. Like he's Spider-Man. He's Spider-Man.
And to be fair, in terms of the rationale, like I can with Ellie, I can feel. I think Mitch is gone, but I'll carry on anyway. With Ellie, I sort of she's the protagonist,
Yeah.
So you're in her shoes, and you're a lot closer, and they have more time to flesh out. And this is another reason I feel like the game suffers from being so short, because I feel like if they had more time, they would have been able to develop her as a character more. Finn, they would have been able to develop her as a character more, and they would have been able to do that part where she snaps a lot more justice, because that does feel very sudden. It does not feel well executed.
Yeah,
I feel like they didn't do. Sorry, I was gonna say I don't think they did a good enough job in properly justifying her motivations, and And really, I think like the flashback mission, correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't really do much to give weight to her, her reason for wanting to, go against Roxxon. Like, if really all that mission showed was the fact that, okay, she got some of her ideas here, like it's some foreshadowing to her later life as a tinkerer, but like there wasn't really anything that stood out to me about the fact that, oh, okay, so this is why she'd, be so vindictive against Roxxon more than anything.
I mean, all the motivation I need from Phin is that her brother died and that she feels like she could have stopped it, and she feels a lot of guilt about not being able to stop it. So to me, that's all the motivation I feel like Phin needs. I didn't feel like this was a sudden turn. I feel like their relationship was already kind of broken, and they had already kind of admitted it to each other, and that Phin was saying, I'm not going to stop at anything, and you need to accept that I'm going to do this. I'm going to blow up the reactor, and I don't care. Like, my mind is made up, and you have to accept that. And Miles says, well, then you have to accept that I'm going to stop you. And I think that's the point where their relationship was just done and gone. Like, I think, honestly, their partnership in Roxxon was one of convenience and utility. It's not one of
Definitely.
It's not one of pure friendship. It's not one. I'm talking all Aristotelian right now, but it's not a friendship of trust. It's a friendship because or a companionship or whatever you want to call it, because they have to survive. But once they're out, and once she knows that he's not going to stop, and he stops her from, I will say this about the scene, James and Mitch. I thought it was really dumb that after Phin, in commentary during the fight, was intimating she wanted to kill him, that he left her alone instead of just bringing her with him. Because Rhino was done. He was exhausted, and his suit was done. Like, what's the worst he's going to do? Get back up? Okay, Miles will just bring him back down. What is he going to do? Get away? Okay, Miles will just knock him out again. So I just thought it was really... You want to talk about out-of-character things. I thought that was out of character for Miles, because I don't understand why he let her alone with him when she just intimated a few minutes ago she was going to kill him, and obviously that's a no-no. Even the goons that fall off buildings are webbed to the wall so they don't fall off and die, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That seems
think,
weird to me. Phin turning on Miles, I wasn't super surprised by, but yeah.
I think the thing that really like kind of stood out to me was the fact that like I get the whole fact that by the end she's more vindictive against Simon Krieger and Roxxon than anything, and she puts Harlem aside. But it's like at the beginning you really get the vibe that she's doing it to save Harlem. Like her main interest is the fact that, okay, I want to save Harlem. And then by the end, when Miles like says to her, it's like, hey, like that Simon Krieger's terminal that I said I was going to go look, and yeah, well, it has information that this new form reactor could very well blow up all of Harlem off of the face of the earth. She doesn't even bat an eye to that. Like, that was the thing that
I think she's just in denial. I think at that point Phin is just in denial.
Oh, she doesn't. Sure is. Yeah.
She doesn't want to believe that that Krieger, the man who killed her brother, is smarter than her, because I think that'll feel like a personal failing to her. And I think she's just consumed at this point by her. Again, to go back to Ellie a little bit, I think she's consumed by her grief and her rage, and I just think she stopped caring until just about the end of the game, and then obviously the sacrificial play. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, like the sacrifice thing. That was one moment that felt more in character for Finn for me, where like that sudden change of heart, that felt better executed for me than the other one. I am not sure I was a fan of the act in general. It felt a little cliche to me.
Yes.
So I'm not sure about that. I was maybe hoping for something else to happen where she tries to sacrifice herself. And
I talked about this earlier, but sacrificial plays are a really cheap and easy way for writers to get out of complicated issues, and it doesn't always have to be that way. And sometimes sacrificial plays are okay. Like, I didn't mind the huge sacrificial... I won't do any spoilers, but the huge sacrificial play that happens in the last season of She-Ra, for example, I think is actually kind of decent. I don't think it always has to be bad, but it has to be done really carefully, because for me, it's an easy get out of jail free card for characters who have done a lot of harm to everyone around them, and it's a really easy way for them to get out of having to deal with that, either the writers or the character themselves. And I think that was really frustrating for me that Finn sacrificed herself, because I bet she didn't have to. I'm sure there was another way that could have ended plausibly without Finn dying. And number two, I loved that character. I wanted more of Finn. I thought she was an awesome character. I don't understand how she went toe to toe with Spider-Man. That seems weird. Even if Miles isn't as developed as Peter, when Miles has that line of, "How is she not tired?" I was right there with him. She's just a normal human being with like rocket boots, right? I mean, she works out, I'm sure, but she's a flippin' nerd. Like she didn't have like a mechanical spider bite her, right? So I was very confused how she was taking on Spider-Man. And I don't think Miles was pulling punches, because Peter infamously pulls punches when he's just punching regular guys, because he would crack ribs and, pull a Batman on them basically if he didn't. But yeah, I didn't like the sacrificial play. It didn't ruin the game for me. I still thought it was a great end. I still got emotional at the sacrificial play. It still pulled on the heartstrings, and I was glad that Finn did something good in the end. But like Miles says, she did something good because of something bad she caused.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like I didn't get as emotionally impacted about this sacrifice at all, really, because I wasn't very invested in Finn as a character, which is maybe why we disagree on the earlier changing character. But the part of the ending that did get to me emotionally, which was quite surprisingly, was the bit at the end where the reporter shows up, and it was sort of like that Spider-Man 2 moment
Yes.
where
Yep.
the people on the train are sort of all like, we won't tell your secret, and it's sort of Miles's sort of moment like that where the reporter shows up and she's asking, "Did you see his face? Do you know who he is?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, that's our Spider-Man." And that really, I liked that a lot.
I
That
did
really
too.
got to
I
me.
thought that was a really great moment. It was really good, and it was great because it was a callback. I think Mitch, you talked about this before, but those side characters have a big way of coming back towards the end of the game. If you don't do those side missions, you're gonna be like, "Who the hell are these people?" But if you do those side missions, it's even more rewarding, because you know what Miles and them have gone through and why they're defending him and why they're like, "No, we're not. That's just Spider-Man. It doesn't matter who's under the mask." It's the whole V for Vendetta thing, right? It doesn't matter who's under the mask. It matters the ideas that they represent.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that's a really good point actually.
Yeah.
Because I did do the side missions as I was going along,
Yeah.
so I knew all the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. There was also, obviously it's a Marvel property, so there was an after credit
Shocker.
stinger. I didn't expect it because
I didn't either.
it was. I figured, oh, it's a side story. It's not. There's not going to be a sequel, or maybe there will be. I don't know. But interesting. I that sort of. Do you guys have thoughts, Mitch? You look like you have something to say.
Mitch, unleash your thoughts. Oh, did we
And
lose
he's
Mitch?
gone.
He unleashed his thoughts were too powerful. Mitch,
Oh no.
revert your
Well,
thoughts.
anyway, yeah. Obviously the ending scene, the end credit scene. It was Harry in the Venom thing, which is I believe there was a post credit scene in the first game that was also about
Yes.
Venom, which is very interesting. They seem to be going in like a Harry's Venom direction, but obviously they have Harry in the what would you call that, like a stasis chamber?
Yeah, like a stasis chamber, kind of like what they put Luke in Empire Strikes Back at the beginning.
Yeah, so they have him like floating in the stasis chamber. Then Harry Osborn comes in and he's like, take him out. Yeah, Norman, sorry.
That's okay.
Norman comes in and he's like, take him out, and then scientist's like, oh, he's not ready to be taken out, and he's like, take him out. He's my son, damn it, take him out. But yeah, Dory, what did you think?
Right. So I was with my partner, and we had just seen like the end of the game with Finn making the sacrificial play and all that stuff, and I was like, "Oh, it'd be really awesome if they had an end credits scene here that would redeem all that," because I didn't really care for that too much. Didn't think it was horrible, but got a bit tropish, like you said. And then it actually starts, and I'm like, "Wow, like they're actually gonna do it." And then they show off the scene. It was really cool. I think in the Ultimate Comics that Harry is Venom. I think that is what happens. So I think that they're they're
Yeah.
they're
No.
sort of sourcing that. I think that's what happens, but I could be wrong.
There's been a couple of runs where Harry did have the Venom suit. I mean,
Yeah.
I know the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show had it with him using the
Yes,
symbiote.
I
Let's
believe in
start
the
off with.
original and they do that. I think they did that in I think it was like a cure for his cancer or something like that in the Ultimate Comics, but they do it
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
Ultimate Spider-Man game. They the back in the mid 2000s, which is underrated gem by the way. They also have him be Venom, I think. So yeah, long running tradition
Yeah.
of him being Venom.
That one's Eddie
And
Brock,
in the story, there's a cure for something as well. Yeah, in the Insomniacs series.
Yeah, it seems like they're taking some cues from the Ultimate Comics, like as per the cure for cancer type of thing. But I don't know specifically what comic or run or wherever like Harry first was Venom, because I know Eddie Brock was
Yeah.
Venom in the Ultimate video game, but yeah, like they're combining those two things and making their own thing, which I think is cool. But I think weirdly enough, the thing that stood out to me the most about the post-credit scene was the fact that Kurt Connors was in it. So
Yes.
the Lizard is basically confirmed for the series again.
All right.
Yeah, that's
Which
right. I did notice Kurt.
Is that guy just a lizard or?
Yeah, he's the lizard.
Yeah, that's the Lizard. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That sounds fun. I do want to. Can I just when you mention Eddie Brock, that's his name, right?
Yes.
Now that you mentioned him, did anyone else think when Simon Krieger came up, like in the first mission? This is maybe just me, but I thought, wow, he looks familiar, and I thought he looked like the actor who played Eddie Brock in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah. Topher
Yeah.
Grace. Topher Grace. He looks a little like Topher Grace, which is weird. But yeah, I think they mentioned that on the Deepest Dive. Yeah, he looks a little bit like Topher Grace.
Yeah, they mentioned that on there. Yeah. I think so. Quickly pivoting to like Simon Krieger for like 1 second. Was anybody else really underwhelmed with him in the game? Because they could have done something at least somewhat interesting with them, except instead they just had corporate man bad. Corporate man wants some money.
Yeah, they. I feel like that's something that the whole game suffers from. Like I've said before, that the characters don't have a lot of nuance in a lot of places, and he's one such case where he just feels like generic bad guy number 325. He's just sort of this villain doing bad things and being a dick to people.
I liked how manipulative he was, and I liked how the audio logs that you get from the Roxxon labs really draw out how manipulative of a dick he was. Like, yeah, corporate man bad, not exactly. Again, I don't. Again, the biggest criticism I can make towards the game is not exactly groundbreaking in terms of story, but in terms of like corporate man being bad, like this is real corporate man bad stuff. Like, I don't know. I think it's tropish and it's not particularly original. But I think they still did a really good job with it, and I mean, it definitely made me hate Krieger. And I mean, look, those audio logs are really good too. If you see him,
Troy Baker does do a very compelling, smug bad guy.
He does.
I wouldn't even say compelling. I think like he was just like, I mean, Dory mentioned earlier, but like he just felt like he was hamming it up a lot.
Sure.
For this game, like I think there was that scene where Miles and Phin get captured at like about 2/3 into the game, and they're in that bunker, and he just like sort of kicks the chair around, and he's like, "Yeah, well, your brother's not here, is he?" And he just like he honestly sounded like he's in a Arkham Origins Joker was coming out at that moment.
Yeah,
I felt like he didn't have much nuance, and he felt overly flamboyant for the story they were going for. I don't know.
Sure.
That might
I do kind of like the fact that he's like they sort of played him as a dick behind the scenes, but he put on a nice PR face.
Yeah,
he
I like
seemed
that
like
as well. Yeah,
he sort of played it up. He was a lot nicer in the public and in the beginning when you first meet him, when you're Spider-Man, when you're with Peter. So yeah, I mean, he did have a little bit of nuance, but not much. Anyway, yeah. So, what did you guys think of? We've talked a little bit about like the sacrifice, but how do you feel about the game? The way the game ended?
I liked it. I thought the ending cutscene was really cool. and the way with Miles walking around, like you said earlier, was a good callback. Um, him now knowing everyone and helping people and like feeling more at home, and Genki, he even says to Genki, this is a little bit before, but he says, we, it doesn't matter. Well, he says this. It depends on when you do the mission, but in one of the side missions for the Kingpin, he says, it doesn't matter who this is. Like, we got to get him out of our neighborhood. And Genki's like, oh, that's the first time you said "our," and he's like, don't make this weird. And he's like, too late. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's a really. I thought it was a great scene. And the post credits definitely adds to that. I besides the sacrificial play, I really love the ending. And I liked Peter being back and them having a chance to talk a couple of times before the story wrapped up.
Yeah, I like the fact that they have the ending, and then they have the side mission where you're going about doing the scavenger hunt sort of thing, the following all the clues.
Yeah.
And your sort of reward for that is Miles getting to hear his dad again. I thought that was a really touching.
The postcard
mission.
stuff was really good and got me really emotional. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah. So yeah. The ending was good. I liked that a lot. And the cat as well. I think that was the last thing I did before I put the game down was get the cat.
Okay, seriously, I know this is gonna sound like a joke. Honestly, think this is one of the best you just beat the game rewards ever. I know it's just a little thing, and I'm probably overhyping it, but honestly, it's one of the best rewards. I was so hyped to have that kitty in the backpack and then swatting at your enemies. I mean, it's just so satisfying every time it happens. I mean, the cat audio clips are right on the money too. It was also really funny in New Game Plus because I did Teo's Bodega first mission and I was wearing the Bodega cat suit, and so I had Spider-Man the cat on my back, and Teo's like, Spider-Man, where are you? I'm like, he's right there. He's right there. How can you not see it?
Yeah, I like how the animations are really good for that as well. He sort of when you're swinging around, he sort of puts his paws up like he's on a roller coaster.
Yes.
But yeah, I like that a lot. You mentioned when you finished the game, because you finished it before I did, because you got it before I did. But you mentioned about the post game reward being like the best post game reward you've ever gotten. I thought at some point during the story, I thought, oh wow, okay, we're gonna get to play Genki's video game.
Yes, that would have been really cool too. I wish we had gotten that. I want to know what Nonagon is or whatever.
Because he's sort of working on that throughout the game.
Yeah.
And I think he gets it finished almost.
Yeah, well, he says it's of course the most game developed thing you can ever say. It's like, I finally have it done, except for the voices and the music and it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah. That would have been a fun thing, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, what are you guys looking forward to from the next game?
I think, for me, story-wise, I'm definitely looking forward to how they actually play out the Harry, Norman Osborn type of angle of the story, because the insinuation is that either right at the beginning of the sequel or like sometime early into the sequel that Harry's going to be released and stuff's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to what the ramifications of that are going to be, especially in relation to Peter and MJ, because Harry, you've been gone so long and now you're a 9-foot black gooey.
Yeah, I think that they're really. I wonder if they're going to lean into the horror aspects now next game. I know that sounds weird, but when you have the Lizard and Venom in one episode, both types of enemies, I mean, I can imagine a horror-esque type of scenario with the Lizard stalking you in the sewers. Like, I can kind of imagine that. And they could actually make it scary. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. And then, Venom obviously doesn't set off Spider-Man's spider sense. And so that would be really interesting obviously that could be frustrating, but they could do it in such a way that it's really fun too, and really a bit scary. So I don't know. I kind of want them to lean into that horror element I mean, because think about Venom. He's just this big hulking monster who just consumes everything he's around. I mean, it's horrifying. Going back again to that Ultimate Spider-Man game in the mid 2000s when you got to play as Venom and you got to kick the shit out of Wolverine, which was very funny in retrospect, thinking about the fact that Marvel was just cool with that being in the game. It's amazing, like how violent that character is, and they have it. And I think the game's only T for teen or E10 or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I hope they lean into that horror aspect. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, what I want to see in the next game is the ability to play as Miles and Spider-Man. Sorry, Miles and Peter. They're both Spider-Man, but I think that would be really fun. They need to buff Peter a bit because he's yeah, I think everyone would, as they currently stand, everyone would rather play as Miles because he's faster, he's got better moves.
Yep.
And he looks cooler in my opinion. He's got cats, so
yeah, it's just a win. It's just a win.
Yeah.
I mean, what does Peter have? He's got pigeon facts. I mean, come on, it's just not competing with a cat in a backpack. In a backpack, come on. That's where cats do their best work.
Do you think they're going to start selling merchandise that's just cats in backpacks?
Oh God, I hope so. I want the cat. Yeah, but I don't know how I want them to structure the next game. It's going to be difficult for them to balance because they've got to make Peter interesting to play as, but they've also got to make Miles interesting to play as because they're not just going to get rid of Miles. One idea I've heard is that you're going to play as Peter for half the, and this is an idea, this is speculation, absolutely like nothing to it, no evidence at all this is going to happen, but you will play as Peter for the first half, which I wouldn't mind actually. I did kind of miss Peter once the game is over. I'm like, I kind of miss playing as, with all those quips and stuff like that, because Miles just does not have his quip game ready. There's a part during one of the side missions where he's like, oh, I know Peter taught me a quip for this one. Watch out, bad guys! Like, it's nothing. He's got nothing. But anyway, so in the half of the game, in the first half of the game, Peter would get kind of consumed by Venom or by the symbiote, and he would become evil or at least misguided or something. And then you would play as Miles, and you would have to defeat him. I think that would be really interesting. I would love that because that's totally something that happens, is that Peter does get consumed by the symbiote and he does kind of turn anti-hero for a little bit. I think it would be really interesting to have that kind of Tinkerer Miles dynamic, except with a mentor-mentee thing layered on top. I mean, I think that would be awesome.
I mean, you bring up an interesting point that I completely forgot about, is that, they'd have to, if they're doing Venom, they'd have to do the Black Suit arc.
They have to.
Some way.
They even teased it in Spider-Man 2018, right? They had that room where you could see, I believe you could see like a black suit or something in the background that people found, because of course people found it. And so, yeah, sorry, Mitch, I just got excited about that.
No, I was going to say, like, they'd have to do the Black Suit arc in some form, but I'm not sure whether it'd be better. Like, I think the beauty of the Black Suit arc, I guess you could say, is that you're experiencing it through Peter's eyes. Like, you're watching as this character loses his way. So I'm not sure whether playing through that from Miles' perspective would benefit or detriment that story for the character.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching the Spider-Man cartoon series in the 90s, which was a huge part of my childhood and a huge part of me getting into Spider-Man. And just being able to see Spider-Man, or just being able to see Peter, like, have that power and feel that sort of, also an older Peter, by the way, he's in college in this one as well. And not in high school. He might even be in grad school. But anyway, he, when he gets the suit in the 90s animated cartoon show, he, is consumed by the power, and we get to really see that through his eyes, which is very compelling. So yeah, I totally agree with you that is the best way to do it. I wonder if we'll just switch between perspectives or something, or if we, I don't know. I have no idea, obviously, how Insomniac is going to balance Miles and Peter, but they've set this up for themselves, and there's no other way to do it. They have to have both of them in the game at some point, or it's going to feel like they haven't done anything.
I was going to say, slightly controversial opinion here, but I I'm not sure if I'd prefer it, but I wouldn't mind at all if they just had it where the sequel is all Peter. Like, because I mean, if they're doing the Black Suit arc, I'd say it'd be a very Peter-centric story, especially with Harry and Norman. Like, they're
Sure.
two characters very close to him. So I wouldn't mind it at all if they had it like kind of like where the main game is Peter, and then you in like a couple of years in between you've got like a Miles side game. I wouldn't mind that at all. Like, I think that could be something interesting, but
I mean, what I would quite like is like a GTA 5 thing where you can just drop in and out of each character whenever you want. It would be even it would be cool if like most of the missions had both Peter and Miles in them, and you could play as whichever one you wanted for those missions.
Oh, yeah.
I think it would be.
I think that could be interesting, but it'd be a game design nightmare trying to like
Yeah.
design and create a certain story.
Well, they did it in DMC5, although that's a much smaller scale game, I suppose.
I was going to say that's not an open world game and very linear. So
yeah, that's very incredibly linear.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's one. We could just keep going on about this for a long time, but I think one way you could do it is you could have like James said with the GTA 5 model, where you drop in and drop out of Miles and Peter, and then at a certain point you get both of these characters to a certain place, and then their stories intersect. Like, I don't know, Miles could be doing more local stuff in Harlem, and Peter's doing larger scale stuff around New York. I don't know. I have no idea how Insomniac's going to do this.
That's quite cool. I like that. So you sort of you can play as anyone you want whenever you get as far as it'll let you in their story. Then once you've gotten both stories to that point, they sort of
Insomniac, hire me. Come on. Yeah, I don't
the
envy.
mission is just them. The mission's both them just going to the same place, and they're like, "Oh, hey there, it's you."
That's right. Yeah, I don't envy Insomniac. They have a difficult task ahead of them that they've kind of, I don't want to say dug their own grave, but they've set up a difficult position to be in, and I just pray they do not include Spider-Punk or Spider-Gwen or anybody else, because good lord, it's going to get way too complicated. At least with just Miles and Peter Parker, or Miles and Pete, at least they have a chance of being able to balance this, because it's not like you haven't been able to balance multiple characters in an open world story before.
Well, they could do. I mean, they could put all those characters. It'd be a nightmare to model all of them, the amount of detail they put into the character models. But they could put all them characters in it, and then just do the Lego Star Wars model of just being able to play whichever character you want.
Yeah, I mean, or you could just, I don't know, you could fully just, you could even give a local co-op option. I don't know if that's actually something people want, but I don't know.
I think,
honestly,
I think if they
personal preference, but
I think if they put co-op in it, it would be probably the most natural co-op implementation ever in a sequel of a game.
Yeah,
because if you think about other things where the sequels, like Ghost of Tsushima Legends, that feels like an add-on. And all that sort of stuff. Like, if a game doesn't start out as co-op, usually it doesn't turn into co-op. But I think in this case, if they put co-op in there, it would feel integrated into the story in a very unique way.
Yeah,
for sure. Except I think we can all agree that either which way Insomniac decides to go for the sequel, I think we can all agree that Twitter's going to collectively lose their shit either way. Because it's going to be... It's never going to be their perfect ideal version of it anyways, so
to be sure. I think that wraps it up.
Yeah.
So if you enjoyed this, please feel free to check out our other stuff. We have Marvel's done a Bug Snacks Spoilercast is our most recent one, which you've probably already seen, let's be honest. But if you haven't, go and check that out. We also have a bunch more podcasts. We have a weekly podcast, which usually goes up on Saturdays. Sometimes it doesn't. Things happen. And yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dory and Mitch, for joining me to talk about Miles Morales.
Whip the whip.
No worries.
We'll see you later.
Whip
the whip.
Bye-bye.
Farewell.
Hello and welcome to the Toast Podcast.
I hate this. I'm dropping out of this call.
Okay. For real this time. for real this time. Hello and welcome to the Milk Toast podcast.
Is
It's
Moist
a better
Toast the next
name,
one?
right? It's a better name, Milk Toast.
That's right.